offerings. 2 Kings chapter 10, verses 20 through 22, verse 24, and verse 28, it is written, "And Jehu said, proclaim a solemn assembly for Baal, and they proclaimed it. And Jehu sent through all Israel and all the worshippers of Baal. And he said unto him that was over the vestry, bring forth vestments for all the worshippers of Baal. And when they went in to offer sacrifices and burnt offerings, thus Jehu destroyed Baal out of Israel." See, Jehu set up a test for those who were Baal worshippers, and when all those assembled who were the Baal worshippers, then he destroyed the Baal worshippers. So let's look at these scriptures that spoke of Baal worship and how it was done in the nation of Israel. Baal worship was done in the temple of the God of Israel. They were also worshiping him, that is the God of Israel, in the temple. So this was mixed worship unto him in his temple. Baal worship involved setting up sacred trees or Asherah trees near an altar. It involved the worship of Ashtarte or Ishtar, or it's been anglicized as Easter, which is the fertility cult. It involved the offering of sacrifices and burnt offerings. It involved sun worship. Jeroboam set up a mixed worship system. Jeroboam was the first king of the northern kingdom. And in 1 Kings, we're told that the worship system that he set up was likened unto the building of the golden calf, which the children of Israel did in the wilderness after they received the Ten Commandments. 1 Kings chapter 12, verse 28 and verse 29, it is written, "Whereupon the king took counsel, and he made 2 calves of gold, and said, it's too much for you to go to Jerusalem." This is making a reference to Deuteronomy chapter 16, verse 16, where in the Torah it says 3 times a year all the males are to go to Jerusalem. Where Jeroboam didn't want the men of Israel to go to Jerusalem because Jerusalem was under the jurisdiction of Rehoboam, king of Judah. And he didn't want the allegiance to turn to Rehoboam and not to him. So he says, no, we can't have the people go to Jerusalem. We will do what is done in Jerusalem, but we will do it, as it says in 1 Kings chapter 12, verse 29, we will do it in 2 other places, Bethel and also in Dan. Then, in doing so, Jeroboam, he celebrated the Feast of Tabernacles, which is in the Torah says it is the 7th month and the 15th day of the month. He kept the Feast of Tabernacles, but he said, we're going to do it in the 8th month and the 15th day of the month. A substitute place, a substitute time, or substitute holidays. 1 Kings chapter 12, verse 32. Jeroboam ordained a feast in the 8th month on the 15th day, like unto the feast that is in Judah. That is the Feast of Tabernacles, which is the 7th month and the 15th day of the month, as is mentioned in Leviticus and chapter 23. Baal worship is a golden calf or mixed worship system. 2 Kings 17, verse 16. They left all the commandments of the Lord their God and made them molten images unto 2 calves. Made them molten images unto 2 calves. What were they doing? They set up a worship system in Bethel and Dan, which the Bible was calling serving Baal. Let's see how the children of Israel, in coming out of Egypt, receiving the Torah by Jesus at Mount Sinai, let's look at more closely Exodus in chapter 32, the building of the golden calf, and let's see when the children of Israel built the golden calf, they were proclaiming worship unto the God of Israel. Once again, in my mind, as I was watching movies like the Ten Commandments and went to church, I had it in my mind that when they built the golden calf, they weren't worshiping the God of Israel at all. I thought that they were worshiping one of the gods of Egypt. Well, what they did is they made an idol of the God of Israel in their mind, and they worshiped him according to the image that they had of him in their mind.